from my wife because she reads all the news. So she was telling me about 2 cases of coronavirus, not South Africans, but offshore, but 2 South Africans. I see in our class there's a few cases, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 cases. This must be reported. It's a situation that we're in. It's the middle. So everybody's talking about this thing. So as I was driving to class, so a few weeks ago, when this was breaking news, or whenever it broke, so I thought to myself that for the Jumu'ah you can speak about it, but I don't know what do I speak about it at Jumu'ah. I don't know what to talk about it. But yesterday a friend of mine, he was quite worried about it, so he spoke to me. So when he spoke to me, the following came to mind. The axioms that we can agree upon. In Surah Al-Anfal, Allah talks about وَاتَّقُوا فِتْنَةً لَا تُصِيبَنَّ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا مِنْكُمْ خَاصَّةً. So there's 2 verses that come to mind. The one is that be wary of a calamity that will not befall the wrongdoers specifically. It will afflict anybody. In other words, there will be a general affliction. So the phenomenon that we spoke about before in relation to this verse was the AIDS phenomenon. See, somebody has AIDS, you can't discriminate, even as Muslims, following a particular ethical, moral, and we're saying that is a lifestyle disease. It's gone beyond a lifestyle disease. Certain children are born with AIDS. Other people are unknowingly infected by AIDS. Actually knowingly, but they can't do anything about the situation. This is the sad reality for some people. So we can't discriminate against somebody, but at the end of the day, the enormity of the sickness is the reality. That's the end of the day. So we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this particular illness is kept at bay, and that we do not become afflicted by it. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provide a cure. For every sickness there is a cure. And the other thing is also for us to, we very much, the term they use is we very much, many of us are very much impressed with the age that we live in. Because we live in an age of advancement. How advanced have we actually become? So I was thinking about the tafsir that I read in Surah Al-An'am that talks about certain things which Allah wants to save you from. So what happens is that in yesteryear there were plagues, and the plagues wiped out like entire nations. So we've developed vaccines, for those plagues, so we won't be sick by it. But what is happening is that the complexity of the challenges that we face, it doesn't put us really much in a better position than, our forefathers going years back. So if you really wanted to argue, are we staying in the best of times or are the challenges just increasing? As we are developing technologically, it's just that the challenges become all the more complex. So those are 2 thoughts just to think about a bit, but ultimately turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us safe, both in terms of our spiritual beings, both in terms of our physical beings, in terms of our well-being and welfare in our country, in the world particularly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, save us and protect us. We live in trying times. We live in really trying times. As Muslims, we live in very trying times. What's happening with, in English, we attended one of our gatherings yesterday when one of our seniors were addressing us, and I'd like to share perhaps just some of the things that were mentioned. One of the things we mentioned that, in English they say, you can't just kick a man. Call a man a dog and then you kick him. Don't just kick the man. Call the man a dog and then you kick him. If you want to understand apartheid, for example, the behavior that a white person will have towards a black person, it's because that they would consider the black person to be a lesser human being. Otherwise, a human being who sees another as an equal will never be able to behave towards this person in a particular way. So that is the understanding of call a man a dog and then kick him. So they were born like that. They're uneducated. They are uncouth, uncultured, barbarians, and all of those things. And then what's going to happen? And then you're going to find, once you label a person like that, then you justify your behavior towards him in a particular way. One of the unique things that was said when it comes to Islamic law, we're very proud of our Islamic law. But one of our teachers shared with us, if you look at one of the lessons that you can learn from ISIS, what was one of the most high, what did you see in the media in terms of ISIS? They Muslims, right? So they're supposed to present Islamic law. What aspect of Islamic law did they present? And every one of it was recorded when they beheaded people. So Islamic penal law, of everything, only that is highlighted. What's the idea behind highlighting Muslim penal law to the world? That is wrong. That's not the way we practice our penal law anyway. But why was every time somebody beheaded, it was recorded and sent around the world? So people can start thinking of Islamic law in light of the penal law, and this is how penal law works. So are you going to like a Muslim? You're not going to like a Muslim. You're not going to like a Muslim. They don't know they don't know about the class on the Sunday. They don't know about what we learn in terms of Surah Al-Hujurat, Surah Yasin, Surah Tawbah, how interaction, they don't learn that. But so have they called us a dog and they're ready to kick us? We must understand it. So that was one of the, this is what we must safeguard against. And therefore, the reaction to that would be that we as Muslims, we must show that, number one, that is incorrect representation of Muslims. And if you want to see representation of Muslims, live with us, work with us, do business with us, right? Interact with us socially, and then you will see the beauty part of Islam. Yeah, and then there are three things, in every era, there are certain things that non-Muslims particular, and then you find certain non-Muslims that are just the enemies of Islam, end of story. Now certain of the non-Muslims in particular regard, what you find is these three things that in today's time particularly irks them. I don't know if I can remember all of them. Before it was a man in a beard. But now the beard is no longer irksome because they found the beard to be fashionable. So now it's okay. So if you put a beard, you're as cool as they are. Yeah? But in today's time, it's one of the things right on top is a Muslim lady either in hijab or even worse in niqab. That irks them to no degree. You can see that it just irks somebody. We're not allowed our freedom in terms of, if you were to ask a woman if you want to wear hijab, you say, I want to wear hijab because that's how I feel comfortable. And some even was in terms of niqab, very comfortable. My conscious choice is, I want to wear niqab in a store. I'm not talking about whether it's wajib or not. We know the niqab is sunnah, but the hijab is fard. In other words, covering your face can be exposed, but the hijab. That's the one thing. The other thing, to no end, which irks non-Muslims from Islam, is this whole issue of polygamy. How can you take more than one wife? That issue. The third issue I forgot. But I just want to highlight, in terms of, to give us an idea, sometimes we, within our limited sphere, sometimes the ulama, they look at certain things from a bigger perspective, and for us to be conscious of this. And the lesson behind it is that we must become two representatives of our Islam. Two representatives. We discussed the abwab of zakah. So now what happens is you must take these ahkam and practice upon it. Because if you're practicing upon it, what's going to happen? People see that in Islam, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينِ, and as the list goes on. Allah grant us a tawfiq, inshallah. Where do we start today? Verse number 61. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts now. So now we need to again just put ourselves into the context. When we look at Surah Tawbah, you can divide Surah Tawbah into two parts. From the verse, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَا لَكُمْ إِذَا قِيلَ لَكُمْ انْفِرُوا, to almost the end of Surah Tawbah, which is in our terms like a half a juz, except for the last two ayahs, speak and correction, 2 or 3 ayahs. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the munafiqun, the hypocrites. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was, and it's important for us to understand the psychology behind the hypocrite. The one is that if we find within ourselves hypocritical qualities, the idea is for us to rid ourselves of those qualities. If we find that by the grace and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we don't possess those qualities, so we must thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that. And be weary that we sit with those qualities. Tamam? Yeah. So we have spoken about a number of those qualities, and the reason why Allah spoke about the division or the redistribution of zakah was because the hypocrites had a problem. How come the Prophet ﷺ is distributing zakah monies to like shepherds who are in need of it, and they're not distributing it to us? Right? So Allah SWT talks about who sadaqah is intended for, the special purpose vehicle. Then there are from amongst the hypocrites that target the person of the Prophet ﷺ. So what do we call that? It's a character assassination. So they want to target the character of the Prophet ﷺ. So they start targeting him. So just for us to understand, and maybe if I can bring a point like from the end, because after we understood the verse, at the end Allah SWT says for them is a punishment, but Allah SWT says a painful punishment. So what do they say? Like when the punishment is in accordance to the crime, a punishment that suits the crime. Quran has a psychology going very much. So when Allah SWT says a painful punishment, so what justifies a painful punishment? You see, if you take any individual in the Muslim community, then it's bad. An innocent Muslim individual, that's bad, because the person is innocent. So, but it only impacts him. But if you take on the leader, it doesn't only impact the leader, it impacts everybody, the potential. You follow me? So, because of the gravity of taking on the leader and undermining the leader and thus undermining the entire cause, Allah SWT talks about painful punishment. So this is important, and it's also important to understand the whole philosophy behind punishment. One article clip I was listening to. In today, there's an argument that a person, Allah forgives all sins, but Allah doesn't forgive that partners are associated unto him. So a person says that because of a word of disbelief, a person is bound for the fire of hell for eternity. It doesn't match up. But if we really study, and it's almost like if I take a transgress against a human being, that's bad. But if I transgress against the messenger, that's even worse. Because what does it entail? And then if I transgress against the Lord of the world, that transgression against the Lord of the world, what does it represent? It's tantamount to transgressing against the entire existence. Because the entire existence owes existence to Allah SWT. So a person who denies Allah SWT, the gravity of what he's doing is very grave. And therefore you find that the punishment, it suits the crime. So here again, the munafiqun now, they're doing a character assassination of the Prophet ﷺ, and Allah doesn't take it lightly. And I think for us to learn a lesson that yes, we can constructively criticize even our leaders, but we need to be careful in terms of the way we go about it, lest we fall into it's more like a character assassination as opposed to a constructive criticism, right? And Allah SWT knows best. So certain munafiqun, what do they do? وَمِنْهُمْ and وَمِنْهُمْ from amongst them. What I understood from the term وَمِنْهُمْ and from amongst them means that within the camp of the hypocrites, you'd find that it is a quality of the bulk of them or all of them. This is what Allah SWT means by وَمِنْهُمْ وَاللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ. I read that and understand that part, exactly how it works, وَاللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ. Because there's two things. One is talking anhum, regarding them, so that's like more distant. But when you say minhum, from amongst them, it means that this quality is prevalent amongst them. Like all of them or the majority of them. You with me? The difference between minhum and anhum. Okay? And then from amongst them are those who do what? Alladhina. So the word alladhina is the plural of the word alladhi, those who. What do? يُؤْذُونَ النَّبِيَّ. يؤذون النبي. Okay. So the word يؤذون, you recognize that verb, don't you? It's a present tense verb because of the ya at the beginning. Okay? So from آذى يؤذي إيذاءً. Okay? أفعل يفعل إفعالا. The root letters are أذى. Hamza, Dhal and Ya. Adhan. Do you see that? You guys see that? I know generally the students across the board, when it comes to sarf and they skrikabichi. But all you have to do with sarf is just pay attention a bit and you'll figure it out. Yu'dhuna is a present tense verb. Why? You find the ya at the beginning, right? You see that? Then what happens is, on what scale is it? It's not on the first scale. It's on the scale which reads أفعل يفعل إفعال. So آذى يؤذي إيذاءً. And the important part for you now is to break it down to its root letters, which is Hamza, Dhal and Ya. Adhan. Adhan means harm. Okay? But in Arabic the word adhan generally, so when I say the term harm in English, if I say harm, what do you understand thereby? He harmed me. Physical harm. So I understand physical harm. The word adha in Arabic does not refer to physical harm. It refers to, number one, they refer to it as Dawrah khafif. It's like a subtle type of harm. You can't put your finger onto it, almost like it's a subtle type of harm. I'm sure you can relate to this. The guy in the office is giving you a hard time, but if you must put pen to paper, you won't know what to say because you can't put your finger on it. But you know and he knows that he's causing you undue harm. That's number one. It's not physical, not eating in the office, but verbal. So, but I'm just talking about the first aspect of adha. Adha is a harm which is khafif. It's light. It's like subtle. You can't put your finger onto it. And number two is generally it is with a word, cold. So it's not a physical harm. You follow what adhan means? Adhan means a subtle harm. I can't think of a better word. Behavior would be more physical, I would imagine. But somebody has like a snide remark. But the remark can mean a number of things. But the way the person sees it, and like that, it's clearly meant to harm you. So that harm is subtle and it's verbal, not physical. So from amongst them are those who harm. You follow me? And the type of harm, how do we explain harm? It is khafif, it is subtle, and number two, it is not physical, it is verbal. Right? It's like a cold war. Like a cold war. Not the psychological war. وَمِنْهُمْ الَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ. Okay, so we understand that. May Allah protect us from all forms of harm. From being the recipients of that harm and from harming others in that way. And in light of this particular verse, what are we talking about? Harm that, people, we also, I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, sometimes, we sit on the other side of the bench and then the wife complains about emotional abuse, psychological abuse, and she can't anymore. So her husband pays nafaqah and everything's ordered, but she's complaining about adha, khafif, and with words and all of that, verbal abuse, psychological abuse, emotional abuse, and all of that type of thing. It reminds me of, just to give you an example of what adha means. Adha means harm. But then uniquely Allah talks about وَمِنْهُمُ الَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ النَّبِيَّ. Who are they harming? An-Nabi. Now you must really understand this now. No? Because what does the word An-Nabi mean? An-Nabi, we translate as the Prophet, okay? So now what happens is, what if Allah said, وَمِنْهُمُ الَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ الرَّسُولِ. So what does Rasul mean? Messenger. So you say Nabi, messenger, Rasul, messenger. And I think the word messenger is more suited as a translation for Rasul. But Nabi, okay? So, when we understand about this Anbiya and this Rusul, who enjoys a higher category? The higher category is the Rasul. A Rasul is a higher, epithet than Nabi. And like the lesson we learned from there is when you address, and this is not, I'm not going off the point, I'm preparing you to understand this point sufficiently. It's a very important point. When you address somebody, you address them with their highest quality. Right? So in other words, if you have and now you have few of them now is a doctor. Right? So now you say, for example, Dr. Yusuf, our friend Dr. Yusuf. But now he's a Maulana also. So what do you say, Dr. Maulana Yusuf or Maulana Dr. Yusuf? Okay, I will leave it for you to decide as well. Yeah. They joke around, oh my God. So what happens, you have a person, he has a few qualifications. If he's a professor, let's get to a neutral point now. The guy's a professor and he's a doctor. So he's a professor. You don't call him doctor. Your highest one. So when it comes to, if you were to mention about from this particular perspective, I find certain people up country they normally say Nabi. But actually you should say Rasul, because Rasul is the highest quality if you look from that perspective. But you can say anyone, doesn't matter. But here Allah SWT, so what do you understand? That Rasul is somewhat different from Nabi. The relationship is that every Nabi is every Rasul is a Nabi, but not every Nabi is a Rasul. Okay, excellent. Now the word Nabi, where does it come from? So our ulama say the word Nabi comes from two, it can come from one of two origins. The word Nabi can come from Naba'a. Naba'a means to inform. So why is the Nabi called a Nabi? Because he informs you from Allah. Or he is informed by Jibreel from Allah. Jibreel informs him, or you can say he informs us from Jibreel from Allah SWT. That's the one meaning. The other meaning says Nabi comes from Naba Yanbu, which means to be high and elevated. You follow me? So now, why is a Nabi called the one a Nabi? Because he's high and elevated. Either because he's high and elevated in the eyes of Allah, or what he does is he elevates the spiritual state of his followers. So that's why it's called a Nabi. Now that second meaning, if you keep it in mind, and now you read the ayah, what does Nabi mean? The high one, the exalted one. And now, وَمِنْهُمْ الَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ النَّبِيِّ. They are harming, what do they try to do? They're harming the one who's high, the one who is exalted. So before even, Allah SWT comes to the defense of his Nabi, he's already raised the status of his Nabi by calling him Nabi. So that harm, will it actually befall him? It's like somebody's almost like saying, you talk about somebody and say, you're out of that league, man. You can't even, what are you saying about so and so? That happens. You may even be right, but you don't have a right to criticize because you on a one level and that person that you're talking about is on a completely different level. If that's the reality, and that's the reality of many cases, where you find that in terms, sorry for the terminology, but an underling would want to criticize somebody who is much more senior. Say, what are you all about? Similarly, وَمِنْهُمُ الَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ النَّبِيَّ. So what do they say? So we understand now the wording, the meanings now. وَمِنْهُمُ الَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ النَّبِيَّ. And what do they say? وَيَقُولُونَ هُوَ أُذُنٌ. وَيَقُولُونَ هُوَ أُذُنٌ. وَيَقُولُونَ, and they say, so this ties in now to the whole idea of adhan. Because other harm here in the verse doesn't refer to physical harm, it refers to verbal harm. So they're going to say something. So what are they saying? وَيَقُولُونَ, they say, huwa, he, referring to the Prophet, what is he? Udhunun. Now the word udhun, we know what udhun means. Hadi udhunun. He is an ear. Right? So what they're saying is that he's an ear, in other words, this is an incorrect understanding of this particular verse. They're saying he listens to everything. يَقُلْنَا وَأُذُنْ, he listens to everything. Right? What the munafiqun are saying is that He listens. In other words, somebody informs him of our hypocritical behavior. And when he's informed about our hypocritical behavior, then he believes it. That almost like I want to say, he believes everything negative that is said about us. That's the correct understanding, and Allah SWT knows best. Others saying this is the Mufassir that we normally consult, he takes exception to this particular, the second tafsir. The second tafsir says no, he listens to, in other words, he listens to everything. That if we were to go to him and mention our excuse, then you'd accept our excuse. Now, normally in today's time, if a person comes and he listens to excuse and accepts it on the face value, we would consider this to be a good person. But in reality, it's not a good person. Because a person who listens to everything and accepts everything, this person, it's very problematic. So that tafsir cannot be understood here. But the correct tafsir is that the munafiqun are saying that he is an ear, meaning what? That whatever he listens to us is actually valid complaints. If he listens about us, he actually believes it. Now that's correct. What else do you want the Prophet ﷺ to do? وَأُذُنْ. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds by saying what? قُلْ أُذُنُ خَيْرٍ. Qul, say, O Muhammad, so they're accusing you of being an ear. But then how should you respond to them? What should you say? Say to them, Udhunu khayrin, an ear of goodness. So what did they intend? They intended an ear of bad, isn't it? But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala flipping the intent of the criticizer on him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, yes, he's an ear, but an ear of goodness. You follow me? Okay. Now that approach to dealing with an unfair and unjustified criticism is the best. Everybody following me? If you take a previous example, when the person said, and I speak in Kirtan by Jad ibn al-Qais, he said, O Prophet of Allah, don't test me, because I have a weakness for women, and particularly the Roman women. So I can't join the Tabuk expedition. What did Allah SWT do for that? Ala fil fitnati saqatu. He's talking about not falling into a calamity. He has fallen within the calamity. So when Allah responds in that particular way, what is Allah doing? Allah is highlighting it further. Now for eternity, everybody who reads Quran will know that that this is what he said, and this was Allah's response. That's one way of dealing with it. But when we find when the Prophet ﷺ is being criticized, how does Allah SWT respond? Does Allah respond in the same way? No. What he does is he turns the words of the criticizer on him. And what are you doing by that? Then whatever the person is saying is now reconstructed, not as a criticism, but actually a praise. And what you do with that criticism is you snub it in the butt, so nobody will even think of it as a criticism. It's like somebody tell you, you're a character, but the person means, it's like a problem, But then what are you saying? Yes, I am a character, a good character. Are you with me? So what you've done, you've actually, what was a criticism, you actually covered it up very uniquely by changing it around. So that's because Allah is talking about His Nabi. Allah doesn't want to have a criticism standing still that you have to defend. Allah SWT turns the criticism around, so it's no longer even a criticism. It's ajib. You follow me? So the first thing is you see, and it's important for us to understand because we must appreciate the maqam of the Prophet ﷺ, not by you and me, but by Allah. When Allah talks about His Nabi, Allah SWT, number one, Allah SWT doesn't talk about like the Dhamir. Allah says Nabi. And it doesn't say Rasul, he says Nabi, raising the status of the Prophet ﷺ, firstly. Then in the way that Allah very delicately deals with this criticism, so then, it's no longer criticism. It's like the Prophet ﷺ himself also, when he dealt with criticism, it's almost like the criticism comes, but when you respond to criticism in a particular way, you giving a life to that criticism. Like Allah did with the person who said, don't put me in a fitna. And Allah says, Allah fil fitna tisaqatu. So what did Allah make of that? Allah highlighted it. So when you respond in a particular way, that highlights the problem more. It's a very important thing to think about. But when the criticism is leveled against the Prophet, Allah doesn't want to highlight it, He wants to snap it, He wants to finish it. So what does He do? He turns it around. So also, sometimes when people criticize you, we need to see, what do you want with this criticism? Do you want to further highlight the criticism so it stands out? Or do you actually want it just to, its existence actually comes to an end, depending on the way you respond to it. And this is what Allah SWT does over here. I think this is an important lesson for us. Because many times we criticize as an invalid criticism, but our response highlights the whole thing, even though we are right and the other person is wrong. But the fact that it's highlighted, and afterwards people will say, Kayf, how, waqad qila. I'm not saying whether it's true or false, but it was said. And who's responsible for highlighting the criticism that unjustified against us? We are the ones. So, there's a finesse and there's a way about dealing with criticism also. And look how beautiful Allah SWT deals with criticism to His Prophet because He doesn't want anything to taint the status of the Prophet ﷺ. And I'm sure you can think of a lot of examples in that particular regard. Now, قُلْ أُذُنُ خَيْرٍ لَكُمْ. The ear of goodness, lakum, for you. Right? So in other words, what the Prophet ﷺ would do is, the valid, what said about the munafiqun, he's going to listen to. But the incorrect of what he's got to discern here. So if something is unjustifiably being said or incorrectly being said, no, he's not going to listen to that and take it, and set store by it. Right? The Prophet ﷺ, he has the proper filtering measures when it comes to listening to things. Okay? And subhanAllah, we can talk a lot about this now. Sometimes the Prophet ﷺ used to tell his companions, these are believers now, don't tell me things about my companions. That's right. Somebody comes to me and says, Ahmad, he's a good guy and everything, man, but he works for ISKCON. So I said to him, look here, man, I want to meet Ahmad with a clean heart, man. So why do you have to tell me he works for ISKCON? We were having like a good relationship. Every Sunday I see him, everything is fine. You follow me? So it's a light-hearted example, but the Prophet ﷺ used to say, don't tell me things about my companions. Because what happens is, now when I meet them, the thing about the udhun, these ears here, very, very sensitive, very important. You must protect that. And you know what? Some of the people that you consider your friends, they think that your ears are a garbage can. They can just throw whatever they want to in there, and then once your ears are connected to your heart, and your heart becomes impacted by it, but it's your fault. You must listen to everything. Actually, you want to listen. And one of the famous starting lines is, I mustn't tell you, man. See how the ladies go, they know exactly what I'm talking about. Listen, I'm not supposed to tell you, nobody knows, and it's a secret, but you must. I just want to say, protect your ears. And if you are an ear, you must be udhunu khayr. You must be an ear of goodness. Don't, be a udhunu shar. That's what the ulama told us. Don't be an udhunu shar, people. If you can, ideally, some stuff you mustn't just hear. These things, I don't know, but for some of us as a lifestyle, I'm astounded by it. What benefit is there in listening to something about somebody else? Unless the person comes with advice, genuinely, and then you can help. But, every time we listening about this one, that one, and the other one, it's no benefit. قُلْ أُذُنُ خَيْرٍ لَكُمْ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَيُؤْمِنُ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ. So the verse goes on, and what is, why is the Prophet ﷺ أُذُنُ خَيْرٍ لَكُمْ? You follow Ahmad, you look at your last name. Look. Qul udhunu khairin, that's mudhaf ilayh. An ear of goodness. For who? Lakum, for you. Is an ear of goodness for you. But now, how does a person become an ear of goodness? So you want to become an ear of goodness. Look to the Prophet ﷺ. What was the primary reason that he was an ear of goodness to everybody? Yu'minu billah. Yu'minu, he believes in Allah. So a person who believes in Allah, what's he going to do? Violate the laws of Allah or follow through on the laws of Allah? And what is the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? When you listen to goodness. So the point here is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah is mentioning the reason why you find goodness or the source of goodness that comes from a person. And in the Prophet ﷺ, it was his belief in Allah. So likewise you and I, why must we be exemplary? Because we believe in Allah. And Allah commands us to do good and forbid from evil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to overlook. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to protect our ears, that we mustn't listen to things that we're not supposed to be listening to. Things that can create a negative impact on our hearts. And Imam al-Haddad, we read the Ratib of Imam al-Haddad. Imam al-Haddad says all the time, for you to stop your ears from listening to a bad thing is much, much, much easier than listening to something bad and then trying to take it out of your heart. So just think about that. Now you're going to listen to it, and now you don't feel most nice towards Titi. So I listen about Titi now in the class. Now tell me about it. For me to have said, Maaf man, I don't want to listen, I appreciate and everything. That effort there is much easier than after you've told me something about Titi, and now for me to take those thoughts out of my heart. Because anything which comes into the heart, I think sometimes we don't understand our hearts. Our hearts is like a qalb that changes all the time. You put stuff in there. The other day, Ahmad, to my this man, what happened was, I came out and I found, the water, mustn't throw the water away, right? You must reuse the water. But now the mop water, which is like, it's got like detergent in there, that you must either use it to scrub on the outside or something, but you can't throw it on the plants. So what happened was, I saw the lady assisting us, and she threw it on the fig tree, man. And I was thinking to myself, but this fig tree is looking so mashallah, but there's about 2-3 figs on there. So I thought to myself, it's sicker because of this. So I told her, you can't throw that water on there. But that soil for the fig tree is like our hearts. If you go to throw cheap water and all of that type of thing, nothing is going to grow from there. We throw everything onto our hearts and we say, no, we're alright. No, don't work like that. You listen. Alhamdulillah, I remedied the situation. Please put up there, so some good compost in there, and give it much more water now, but I'm worried. Inshallah. We must do gardening, brothers. It's very important. It helps us, because it's a heart exercise. I was actually thinking on a Saturday it would be a nice thing if you get people together and say, come, we do some gardening. Just to learn about, you till the soil, like a simple thing like watering the garden. If the sand is just like that and you don't till, and then the water is going to fall away. So you must first turn it around, prepare the soil, and then you throw the water on. So, your child is giving you a problem. So you saying everything is like water for ducks back, they don't listen. Why? Because you haven't tilled the soil. Saying, but you there, you put the water on, and they can absorb. But when the children talk to you, then they don't listen to you. But you have to wonder why. You don't know, you have a connection. Heart to heart, you didn't till the soil. It's just simple things. And then people complain, my son not listening to me. You're not talking to your son. If you tell the soul and you talk and everything, what can you do? Allah will reward you. But if you don't tell the soul and everything, then what happens? So I think gardening is a must for us, with hearts that are not so lekker, so that we can make it lekker, and so it can blossom. So my point is that what you listen is like you feeding your heart. Listen to Quran, your heart is going to listen to salawat. But now you listen, udhunu shar, all the bad stuff going to your heart. It gets here, and wallahi, if you have the semblance of a pure heart, you will feel it. It's damaging. It wreaks havoc in your heart. It's problematic. So udhunu khair. And why do the Prophet have udhunu khair? Yu'minu billahi wa yu'minu lil mu'mineen. And this is an important part. Why is he a year of goodness? Because he believes in Allah. And now the second one here, yu'minu, how does it go? Tell me the difference between the two. Yu'minu billahi wa yu'minu lil mu'minin. Ahmad, you see in the second one is a li, and the first one is a bi. So now in the first one we say, I believe in Allah. Yu'minu billah, I believe in Allah. Let's talk about iman. Now when you say yu'minu li, to believe for someone means to pay testimony to the truthfulness of that person. You follow? So now what in Surah Yusuf, what you did, when the sons came back, what did they say to them? وَمَا أَنْتَ بِمُؤْمِنٍ لَنَا. What does it mean? You're not going to believe in us. We know that they're going to believe in us. But you know what happened? You know, the wolf got him, tore his shirt and ate him, and there's nothing we could do about it. But we know already before we tell you that you're not going to not believe in us in terms of, iman, but you're not going to believe our story to be true. So the Prophet ﷺ, there's a quality. He's a good ear. Why? Because he believes in Allah. So because he believes in Allah, his conduct is going to be correct. Because Allah, even if it's the munafiqeen, Allah still going to hold him to task. And he also believes in the believers. So when the believers talk to him, and it's the truth, and he believes in it. So our Muslim brother and sister, when they say something to us, and they know amongst ourselves, what should it be? We should believe in it. Because it's an ayah in Surah Al-Hujurat, which we did. And then ayah talks about, إِن جَاءَكُمْ فَاسِقٌ بِنَبَإٍ فَتَبَيَّنُوا. When a sinner comes to you and tells you what is the truth, something, then ascertain first whether it's the truth or not. Lest you do something based on that and then you regret later on. But if it's a good mu'min person, there's no reason for us to disbelieve the person. So your default in relation to a believer should be that, look here, this believer is talking the truth. And he is a mercy for those who believe amongst you. Now Allah's talking about munafiqun. Look here, you having a critique about the Prophet ﷺ, but actually he's a mercy for those amongst you who would actually believe. وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. This is what where we started off this verse. What did we say? وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ, those who harm. And if just to remind yourself, what's the meaning of harm? It is something which is subtle, khafif, and something which is called speech. Those who harm the Prophet ﷺ, lahum, for them is what? Adhabun alim. Adhabun alim. And here the ulama again say, Rasul is what happened? Rasul is higher than Nabi or Nabi higher than Rasul? No, Rasul is higher than Nabi. Remember, because every Rasul is a Nabi, right? Every Nabi is a Rasul. A Rasul is one who receives revelation and is being commanded to convey that. Tabligh. Right? So to give you maybe understand the Prophet, they say when he received the first ayah, he was a Nabi. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. But then when the verse came down, Ya ayyuhal muddaththir, qum fa'anzir, warn your people. Now he becomes a Rasul because he's now been commanded to convey, just to give us an understanding. That's according to one view. So now what happens is, those who harm who? Rasul Allah, the messenger of Allah. So the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Rasulullah, in that is contained what? Is contained the reason why what's going to happen comes. Because they're not harming any Tom, Dick and Harry. They're harming the Rasul of Allah. So now because that's who they're harming, what is the punishment now? Adabun alim. The punishment, what? Painful punishment. Because you can criticize one of the Sahaba, that's fine. That's limited to him. But when you talk about criticizing the leadership, and then it becomes a bit of a problem. I think in today's society, in the liberal free democracy that we live in, I think that it's your right to criticize your leaders, but I don't think we have any limit when it comes to criticizing. Because our criticizing goes on to disrespect and so forth. You know what I'm saying? Therefore, what people find funny, for example, let's say the EFF and Julius Malema, I don't watch it and so forth. But if you're right, but there's a respectful way of doing it, man. You follow me? And that's the issue, particularly when it's a leader. If you're talking to an underling and so forth, then you can go for it. But it's not good behavior. Because tomorrow when you're going to occupy the thing, exactly the same thing is going to happen to you. Kamatadeen to that, like you deal with others, and what does it lead to? Chaos, and nobody benefits. Allah grant us the understanding. Jazakumullahu khairan, wassalamu alaikum.